Okay, so welcome to today's session. So we want to carry on from where we left in the last session. So in the last session, we had introduced controls. So I think a quick recap might do. A quick recap of what we discussed in the last session might help. So let's have a quick recap of what we were discussing in our previous session. So we introduced controls where I said that a control is a system that we have put in place that is going to help the entity identify fraud and error. So in the presence of controls, there are systems put in place by management that are able to pick where there are errors or where there are misstatements in the company. Remember, things could be wrong, not because of fraud, but because of error. So controls should be able to pick fraud and error. They should be able to pick where there was fraud and where there were errors. Also, we did talk about the components of an internal control. We said for there to be internal controls, there must be the control environment, that is the attitude of the leaders of the organization or the attitude of those charged with governance towards controls. So in an environment where they have a positive attitude towards controls, we're likely going to have strong controls. So the components of an internal control, we have the control environment, the risk assessment process, the information and communication system. We also have the control activities, the monitoring and evaluation. I think we do have that recorded. The auditor we said the auditor is to first of all assess the control environment. If there are weak controls, it can tell him that the chances of errors and fraud are high. So if you're an auditor and you have to assess the control systems of the client and you realize that there are a lot of loopholes in their control system, this can tell you that there are a lot of errors and fraud. Let's think of a case where you are coming to audit a client, you ask them, okay, your goods in the warehouse, how do you make sure your goods are safe in the warehouse? Then the client tells you, okay, we have a guard. This guard works 24 hours 7. They work 24 hours 7. So already there's a weakness. If that's the only control that they are relying on, there's a weakness because we can't have a normal human being operating 24 hours without breath. It means one way or the other, part of the 24 hours, the guard might be sleeping and things can be stolen, while we believe that there's a guard in place. So as an auditor, if you analyze the control system of the client, it can help you pick where there are errors, where there is also fraud. So the first thing, understand the control environment of the client. This can help you pick where the errors and fraud are. Then also, we did say, as you look at the control system of the client, you need to document the client's control system. I think we need to add something to this. So the documentation, we said it can be done using narrative notes, flowchart diagrams. We can use internal control questionnaires. So internal control questionnaires, flowchart diagrams, and narrative notes. What I think we need to add there is just, let's just add one advantage and disadvantage. So they can ask you to give an advantage and a disadvantage of each. So you are looking at the client's control system. I come to your company to audit, then I say, okay, what do you use to make sure errors and fraud are not taking place in the organization? Then you start telling me what you as an organization make use of. I can start writing small, short notes, summarizing what you're saying. Those are narrative notes. Advantages of using the narrative notes is that in terms of discussing with the juniors, they are easy to understand to the juniors. So even if I'm going to audit with the juniors, I can easily tell them, okay, the client that you're going to audit, their control system is like this, and like this. And if I'm giving them narrative notes, they are better in terms of being understood. They explain things better than the other methods. So they are easily understood by junior. They are easily understood, not by just juniors. You can say they are easily understood by all members. Understood by all members of the team. It's easy for them to understand if we have written them in the form of notes than just to give them a diagram. They might not understand what is this diagram saying. Because remember, when you're going to audit, we go as a mix, as a team with juniors and seniors. So the juniors may fail to understand, because understanding the controls, it's key to understanding where errors are. Where there are no controls, there are high chances of errors in those areas. So they also need to get an understanding of the control system. So if we get to use the narrative note, they better explain the control system. Okay, then on the disadvantages part of, I'm just going to pick one. So on the disadvantage of using these narrative notes. The narrative notes, if the organization has a complex or if it has a lot of controls, then the notes can end up becoming too much. So they can become cumbersome. So if the organization is a large organization, then maybe we need something that is simplified. We can't have small notes for everything that is in the organization. It ends up having a lot of information which can be unnecessary. So we can say that for the notes can become cumbersome. They can become cumbersome if the system of the client is complex. So the client is dealing with a large organization, and in the organization of the client, there are a lot of systems that are in there. So trying to write short notes for everything, it can become a lot of information. But a flowchart diagram tries to simplify all the controls in the client system on one diagram. So we want to show all the controls on one diagram. So if we try to use this system, it becomes easy in terms of there is less information. So it summarizes all the information. So in terms of advantages, we can say it can easily highlight where there are no controls, because you can see all the controls are available. So it can be easy to highlight or identify where there are missing controls. It can be easy to identify where there are missing controls. Because you can see all the controls on one diagram. You can pick, okay, here there should be a control here, but it's not there. But if they are not, if you read a lot of information, it might be difficult to pick where they are missing controls. The disadvantage with this approach of using the diagrams, the disadvantage, it is the advantage of the flowchart diagram, sorry, of the narrative notes. So the disadvantage we can talk about, these ones now, they may need additional notes for understanding purposes. So the diagram alone may not clearly explain what's taking place. So they may be not clear. They may not be clear without the assistance of additional notes. They may not be clear without without additional information. So if you are using a flowchart diagram, it might sometimes end up requiring the narrative notes. So you might have the diagram, but people fail to understand what is this diagram saying? What is this control here? So the narrative notes explain, but the flowchart diagram is just a diagram showing you where a control is. So it might not clearly explain which control is there, how does it operate. So it might not be easy to understand without the aid of additional notes. Then the question is whether is it an open questionnaire or is it a closed questionnaire. The question is, in terms of advantages and disadvantages, they have the same advantages and disadvantages because they are questionnaires. So advantages of using questionnaires. So remember, this is where you prepare questions, you ask the client about their control system. So if you are using the questionnaires, where you tend to ask the client about the controls present in the organization, the easy point is questionnaires they tend to be fast because they have short answer questions. So in terms of time saving, questionnaires, we can easily get the information that we need and at a very less time. So they are fast in gathering the information. So if you need more advantages, you can read that as well on your own. So you can't spend all the time talking about advantages and disadvantages. So the disadvantage we can talk about with questionnaires, they may miss some controls which can be tailor-made for the company. So we can have controls that are specific for our company that were not there in the other companies where you audited before. So if you come with a questionnaire, normally your questionnaire will ask questions that are based on the usual companies you have been auditing. So we might have our own controls. Like if all the companies you have been auditing, in their warehouses, they use a guard and locks, but we use cameras. So you might come with a questionnaire which is asking us, do you have a guard or locks in your warehouse? Then we say no, and you think so, we don't have controls. We might have our own controls which are not the same with those that you have been used to. So the disadvantage is that it might miss certain controls present in the company which are client specific, which are different from other companies you have been auditing. All right. So which are different from the other companies you have been auditing. So these are some of the advantages and the disadvantages we can come across. Now let's get moving. So I was going through a quick recap of what we covered. So let's continue with our recap. So we did also talk about a good control system. The elements of a good control system. There are things we expect from a system that we are saying this is a good control system. If you have started your organization and you have designed your control system for us to say, okay, your system is super. There are less errors and fraud that are likely to take place. What must your system normally incorporate? Your system must have segregation of duties. One person shouldn't be doing everything. Your system must make sure we are hiring the right people for the job. Don't just hire people because they are your friends, because they are your family members. Someone should be hired for the job because they have the competence, they have the skills required. Once you start hiring people on other bases, That one is a weakness in your control system. Why? Because that person, if they make errors will not say because this is your relative, so let's just be correct. They will be still errors. So that will not, so we need to make sure the recruitment policy is recruiting the right person for the job. We need to make sure that there are physical controls in place. So the physical controls in place, these are controls we can physically see. These are controls like having a security guard, having cameras, having logs. Those are physical controls. We need to have authorization controls, reconciliation, recalculation. We need also to add, let's add one more, application control. So the application controls, if we are using systems or softwares, there must be passwords, or there must be things like firewalls. There must be things like a regular update to make sure our applications are working effectively. So application controls, these are directed to the systems. To the systems being used by the company. If we don't update our systems, it can end up becoming a problem because it might not give us the information that we need. So application controls, these are more of the applications, the systems we are using. Then we moved on to talk about the cases. So if you're dealing with controls, please, this is a key area. Audit risk, test of control, substantive test. These ones, they constitute the bulk of your exam. So don't mind me taking my time repeating some of these things. I know they're crucial. They should be on your fingertips. So I say the first thing, or the first type of questions you are likely to find are the questions that will say identify a key control. If you're identifying a key control, we are saying the organization has its controls. It has its systems in place that it uses to prevent errors, that it uses to prevent fraud. If you are identifying a key control, you are identifying a way that they are using, that you can say, no, this way is a very good one. If I was to also run my business this way, I would adopt this one. It's a good control. A key control is good because, not just because it's a key control. So if the question says identify a key control, you tell us the control mentioned, or we can call it the control indicator. Then you tell us why are you saying it's a good control. So you don't get a mark because you have been able to identify a key control. No, you get a mark because you have been able to explain why is it a key control. The issue is not about identifying a key control. The issue is about being able to explain why are you saying in this client system it's a very good system. What is it that is in that client system that you are appraising, that you are applauding to? So we are saying it's a key control. Let us know why. Then let's move on. We also mentioned that certain questions will say identify a control deficiency. A control deficiency is a weakness in the control system. If there is a control deficiency, there is a weakness in the control system. So you want to pick in the client's systems what problems could be there. I have given you some of the elements of a good control. So you pick what could be wrong in their system. Just ask yourself, are they segregating their duties? Are they hiring the right people? Are they doing things right? So a control deficiency is a weakness in their system. There's something that they're not doing right. Identify that. What is it? And again, you don't get answers for being able to identify. You get answers for explaining. Why are you saying it's a deficiency? Why are you saying it's a problem? So we don't just want people who come with rotten answers, who claim this is a control deficiency. No. From the case given, why is it a problem? Why are you saying it's a problem? Basing on the information given in the case. Let's move on. The last thing we did talk about was a recommendation. So you don't just come up with problems only. We are not just looking for problems without solutions. If you are able to pick a problem, I'm sure you should have a solution to it. As an auditor, you don't just pick problems that can be solved. So you need a recommendation for the weakness that we have identified in their system. You are saying there's a problem here. What then must be done? If we are providing a recommendation, it must clearly state who should do it. We shouldn't just say there must be segregation of duties. No. Tell us how the duties should be segregated. One person is doing everything. There is a problem of lack of segregation of duties. Recommendation, segregate the duties. No. Tell us who is responsible for, who should be responsible for this task and who should be responsible for that task. So it requires someone with an understanding of the system who knows how it works. If someone is being recruited, that should be the HR department. If someone is getting paid, that should be the payroll department. So be able to mention who should do it, not just say there should be segregation of duty. Let's move on. Okay, so we have mentioned that the questions will say, identify a key control, identify a control deficiency, and give a recommendation. Then, as auditors, our duty is then to test that control system. We need to verify whether the system is working well. Someone can tell you, this is what we do in the organization. And as auditors, we can be satisfied that these people have good controls in place. But having good controls in place doesn't mean those controls are working. Having qualified teachers in the organization, in the school, it doesn't mean those teachers are teaching the right thing always. Having the good team, having segregation of duties doesn't mean that fraud is not taking place. So as an auditor, you are required to have professional skepticism. So professional skepticism is a questioning mind, a doubting mind. Okay, you have said that you have cameras that are working. Can we go and see the cameras? Can we check the footage? You have said that there are people that are qualified for the job. Can we see that their paperwork to confirm that indeed they are qualified for this job? You have said someone is approving this before it's approved. The senior, the finance director, first of all confirms. Can we go and check some of the records that have the work approved and see whether there is a signature from the finance director confirming that they approved it? So yes, the system that they are using is good, but as an auditor, we need to take a step further to then test that system that they are using. So now let's get to test of controls. Let's look at test of control. But sorry, before I get to test of controls, there's something that that I just thought about that I think I need to put it down before I forget. So before you start testing the controls, when you are still at the stage of identifying the weaknesses in the control system. So when you're still in the stage of identifying the weaknesses, so I think I can put it here before recommendation. When you're identifying the weakness or deficiency, if you're identifying the weakness or deficiency, the auditor is not just supposed to be there checking every weakness and every deficiency. If you thought that way, that an auditor is going to give 100% assurance, no, it means there is actually an expectation gap. An auditor doesn't give 100% assurance. An auditor doesn't test everything. An auditor doesn't check every system, but auditors work with samples. So the auditor can come across a certain weakness. But are they supposed to talk about every weakness? Even the question might ask you, identify key weaknesses or identify key controls. So it's not every weakness that is a problem, but the weaknesses should be significant. So NB, the weaknesses identified must be a key weakness. The weakness identified must be a key weakness. The weakness identified must be a key weakness. What do I mean by this statement? The weakness identified must be a key weakness. If it is a key weakness, you identify this by its materiality, or now let me say, matters to consider. Matters that you need to consider in determining. Matters that you need to consider in determining where or a deficiency is significant. So we're not just looking at all the problems that they have. We want significant ones, those that are likely to have an impact to the auditors, those that are likely to have an impact, to the financial statements. What do I mean by this? If you hire the wrong accountant, someone without accounting skills, that can have a very big impact on the financial statement. But if you hire someone to maybe as a guard, this person doesn't have experience and there are logs in place and they've been hired, but they don't have so much experience. That might have less impact than hiring a wrong person to be an accountant. So sometimes it's not every deficiency we want. It's those that are likely to have a very big impact in the financial statements. That's why I was saying, as we explain the weakness, tell us why is it a weakness? What is it effects? What is it possibly going to cause to our financial statements? Now, which factors do we consider? Number one, the likelihood of the deficiency of deficiency. The likelihood of the deficiency. So I can say the likelihood, we want to look at, is it going to cause, is it going to affect the financial statement? So you can say the likelihood of the deficiency affecting the amounts recorded in the financial statement. If it's a high likely that this deficiency is going to result in a lot of errors in the financial statements, then it is a key deficiency. Is it going to impact in the financial statement, and what impact does it have? Let's move on. Then besides that, you can also look at the amounts exposed, the number of transactions exposed to the deficiency. The number of transactions exposed to the deficiency. A clerk, like we said, is not someone who is in a position to approve anything. They are junior, they can't approve, they can't be given approval. But if the question says the clerk approves once in a while, maybe once in a year, it's a deficiency, yes, but it doesn't affect a lot of transactions. So it being a significant deficiency, how many transactions are exposed to that deficiency? You need to factor that into account. Then also, we can look at the vulnerability, or we can call it the susceptibility, the vulnerability of the amounts or of the transactions to fraud and misstatement. So the vulnerability of the amounts to fraud and misstatement. What do we mean by this? Certain areas of the business, they are vulnerable to fraud. So, like the case of approval, if the clerk approves, maybe we can look at where the clerk has just approved an area that does not involve estimates. So they've approved an area which is not involving estimates. If it's not involving estimates, it is not that vulnerable. Of course, there's a problem, but there's less vulnerability. But as long as there is need for estimates, it becomes a problem if a junior is given room to approve something that has estimates. Why? Because that area is more vulnerable to misstatements. Because estimates are amounts that are subjective. So they are vulnerable. So those areas must be handled with care. So if it's a vulnerable area, then it might be a key deficiency. Maybe let's add one more. What can we add there? So I said the likelihood of the deficiency affecting the amounts recorded, the number of transactions, the vulnerability of the transactions, we can look at the frequency. The frequency of the exceptions. The frequency of the exceptions detected as a result of the deficiency. As a result of the deficiency. What do we mean by this? Frequency is the number of times we are getting unusual results. Exceptions, if it's an exception, is not following the usual rules. So because of the weaknesses, how many times are we getting unexpected results? So this, however, is more closely related to the number of transactions to the second one. But the frequency of exceptions, these are, this is when things are not following the normal rule. Like sales, we know that every month we have sales of 2,000. But there is a weakness in the control, and because of the weakness, the sales are just changing haphazardly over and over again. So if there is a weakness, but there are no exceptions, things are still following the normal rule, we can say, yes, there's a weakness, but it's not having that big impact. But if there's a weakness, but that weakness is causing the amounts that you're getting to be changing rapidly, then that is going to be also a factor to consider. So remember, we are looking at, before you can say this is a key weakness, what should we consider? So what is its likelihood to affect the amounts recorded? How many transactions may have been affected? How vulnerable is the area where there's a weakness? So is it an area that is vulnerable to misstatements and fraud? We can look at the frequency of the exceptions recorded as a result of the weakness. These are some of the things you can consider. So these are likely to come together with a case, but as a knowledge question. So they can ask you this 4 marks. Can you give us the factors to consider before you can say this material, this misstatement, sorry, this weakness is a key weakness. Now, I guess we can move to the test of control. Just confirm, my team online, just confirm, are we together?
Yes.
Okay. So now let's get to the test of controls. So just remember it in your mind. Control system is what they use to prevent fraud and error. As an auditor now, I have come to carry out the audit. And as an auditor with professional skepticism, I don't just believe what you are telling me. So if you tell me that there are strong controls, I would want to test those controls. I would want to test these controls to see whether indeed they are working as you have mentioned. So the test of control, this is carried out by the auditor to verify that the control system is working effectively. The test of control, this is carried out by the auditor to confirm that the system is working effectively. So when the auditor is carrying out a test of control, he can use the procedures, the audit procedures. So the auditor can use the audit procedures to carry out the test of control. Which are the audit procedures? If you still remember, we said we have A, E, I, O, U. But for controls, I want you to add a T. Let me just summarize them. Remember, we said if you want to, as an auditor, you can use the analytical procedures. This involves comparison. Analytical procedures. So analytical procedures in controls, these may work if there's been a change in the system. So the organization is now using a new system. We can compare what this new system is recording against what the old system was recording to confirm that the new system is working well. Is the new system able to perform the same things that the old system was performing? So the analytical, the comparison can also assist in conducting a test of control. They've said they've upgraded their systems. They've introduced a new system which is faster. Yes, it might be faster, but it might record wrong information. So we might also need to compare the amounts recorded using the old system with the new system. Besides analytical procedures, you want to get evidence. You can use inquiry. You can ask the management, okay, how do you do it? What is it that you do? So maybe when you counting your inventory, please tell us, how do you count your inventory? So I can inquire from those that are going to be the employees, or I can inquire from the management to get more information. So I can ask them so that they explain to me more, how do they do it? But always remember, inquiry is not the most reliable evidence, because the rate of you get it being lied to is very high. Then inspection. Inspection now, this is where we're talking about maybe a signature. So they are saying that there's a senior who verifies after everything has been done, maybe before someone can be paid, the senior verifies the working hours. So there must be a signature to confirm that the control has been done. So inspection, you then use it to inspect that signature. Is it there? If it's there, okay, you can say the control is doing well. Then we have observation. Observation. So the observation control, when do we use observation? We use observation, kazhinji observing is watching. You observe, if you're observing, you are watching. You observe a process being done. Like this is normally common when we are looking at inventory count. So the client can tell you that this is their inventory system. This is how they are counting their inventory. This is how they are counting their inventory. So you want to verify that indeed this inventory system is working well. You can go with them when they are counting the inventory. You observe what they are doing. So you watch the system. So observation. Then besides observation, we can have, besides observation, we can have a recalculation. So you can take a sample of what the new system is calculated. You recalculate, is the system working well? But recalculation, it works, recalculation, it's less user-friendly for controls because the controls are more of checking the system. So recalculation is more of confirming the balance. So if you are checking the control system, we are checking, if you are testing the control system, we are looking at the system that is recorded. Is the system working well, not the amount recorded? So that's why recalculation is not that ideal. Then the T, which I added, is the test data. Another way of testing the control system, if it's a computerized control system, you can use test data. If you are using test data, you can feed in wrong information into the system to see whether the system will pick that this is wrong. So if they've entered maybe the barcodes into the system, I will try to punch in or log in, or sorry, I will try to swipe in a product with a barcode that is not exactly the one that was put in the system. Maybe all the other numbers could be identical, then I just change one digit to see whether the system can pick that this is false. Or I can try to log in into your account with a different password and see whether it can pick that this is wrong. So test data, we are saying the control system that they are using, especially if it's an application system, we want to test it, does it pick when wrong information has been fed into the system? Okay, so these are the procedures that the auditor has to do. The auditor can compare, the auditor can inquire, the auditor can inspect, observe, recalculate, test data. So when giving your test of control, it is important to highlight where the procedure is to be carried out. The same with all procedures. You need to give us, you need to tell us what are we comparing? What are we inspecting? You don't just say inspect. What is it that we are inspecting? Observe, what is it that we observe? And let it be clear why you have observed. What is it that you want to confirm? It must also be clear what is it that you want to confirm. So you don't just inspect. We are inspecting. Why are we inspecting? Of course, we know, maybe you've told us what are we inspecting, but why? What do you want to confirm? After you've inspected, what is it that you want to confirm? So maybe we can have a case. KD Limited or let me just check from what I've already given you. You can work with that. Let's have this one here. Because your answers will be a table, you tabulate your answers. So your answer will be a table. So if your key control and the test of control. Barbara, kindly turn off your mic. You can hear your background sound. So we have the key control and the test of control. So the key control, we had already dealt with it last time. I'm just going to do this. So if we say this is our key control, so the question was, KD Limited offers products on cash and also on credit basis. Before a new credit customer is allowed credit, the finance director assesses the credit history of the client and approves the credit. So the key control, the new credit customers are first approved by the finance director before they are given credit. The authorization is being done by a senior person, which reduces the chances of debts as credits are issued to deserving customers. Then, how do we test this control? Can think of your IAE or I think I inspection would do. So you can say for a sample of the receivables that were given credit, review Okay, sorry, we are saying the authorization, the new customer are first approved by the finance director. So my point here, I'm just trying to figure out how best we can put it, because if the finance director is reviewed, they must sign to confirm that they have approved. Approval documents. To confirm that the finance director signed as a confirmation that they approved the credit. Please, remember, there is no one way of saying it. So for example, of the receivables that were given credit, review the credit approval documents to confirm that the finance director signed as a confirmation that they approved the credit. So how do you test that this control is being applied? How do you test that this control is effective? The test of control. Let's move on. So remember, a test of control or controls are addressed to the systems. There are systems that are normally asked in the exam. I'm not saying these are the only ones you should know, no. But there are key systems like the purchase system, the sales system, the inventory system. These are crucial systems that they are likely to, even the payroll system. So what are the key issues with these systems that you should watch out for? The key issues to watch out for in the purchase system. So the first issue, we can consider that issue of segregation of duties. So we shouldn't have one person that is placing the orders, the same person receiving the orders, the same person issuing the payment. So there must be different departments working together. So like what? If a purchase is being done, when a purchase is being done, we can have a purchase order. So we can have a purchase order. So the purchase order can be done in triplicate. So the purchase order, one copy remains with the ordering department, or it can remain with the warehouse department. The other copy can go to the supplier. The other copy can also, or let's say we have the procurement department and the warehouse. So the procurement department remains with a copy. Then we have the warehouse, they also get a copy. Then we have the other copy which goes to the suppliers. So there must be different departments working together. It's not one person who is, so The copy is gone to the procurement, warehouse, and suppliers. When the goods are received, so when the goods are received, the 3 copies. 1 copy should go to the procurement department. The goods received note. They should receive the procurement or ordering department. They should receive a copy of the goods received note. Why should they receive a copy? To verify that the goods that they received are the ones they had ordered. 1 copy should go to the warehouse department. Why? So that they can confirm the goods which are on the purchase order are the goods they are receiving in the warehouse department. 1 copy should go to the accounts department so that they can facilitate the payment, so that they can also know which goods we receive. So it's not one department that should be doing everything. So in a good system, we should have different departments working together. The moment we have one department doing everything, there's a lack of segregation of duties, which is a problem. In a good system, purchases must be done at the right time. Purchase orders must be placed at the right time. So we shouldn't end up running out of stock. If the system is placing orders when goods are now needed, then there's a problem. So if a good purchasing system, we should place orders in time, and at the same time, we should not overstock. Then a good system must ensure as well orders are, or goods are bought should make sure the goods are bought at the optimum price, the most beneficial price for us. We shouldn't just end up buying things. So our purchase system, so these are things we can use to identify loopholes in the system. It's a good one. We should be buying things at the optimum price. In a good system, we should also make sure the payments are made at the right time and to the right people. So we should pay at the right time and also to the right people. The sales system. In our sales system, if it's working well, the sales system, we should only accept sales order for the goods that we have. The moment you start receiving orders, accepting orders for the goods you don't have in your warehouse, there's a weakness in your system. We shouldn't have a system that allows someone to place an order of goods that are not there. So the system must only process. So you shouldn't get a system where someone has paid for the goods. Now we go to the warehouse to collect the goods, we realize there are no goods in stock. So the system must only process orders if the goods are in inventory. Also, the system must ensure that credit is only given to deserving customers. with a good credit history. Credit should be given to deserving customers. If you, this now comes, this includes who is approving the credit. Because if you use the wrong person, this is where we end up giving credit to undeserving customers. So it is our desire that the system should give credit to deserving customers. Then also, if the system is working well, we shouldn't have a case where someone buys goods and we delay in delivery. So the system, so orders must be dispatched in time. So our system must enable the orders to be dispatched in time. And also maybe we can talk about issues such as quality. The quality is maintained. These are some of the aims we have in our sales system. So if the system is working well, it should have measures in place to maintain the quality of sales. It should have measures in place to ensure goods dispatched arrive in time or good orders arrive in time. Then also there must also be segregation of duties. So segregation of duties is also there here. Okay, sorry about that. So segregation of duties, how? The same way we're talking about it in the purchasing system. So if a sales order is placed, if the system is working well, once a sales order has been placed, we should have a copy that goes to the warehouse. We should also have a copy. Let me just discuss this. So we should have a copy that goes to the warehouse department. We should also have a copy that goes to the accounting department. So we are saying this shouldn't be handled by one department. So the warehouse department are the ones that are going to dispatch the order. The accounting department, they need to issue an invoice. So all these departments, they should know. So the documents should not just be handled by one department. So the sales system is another system you need to understand that is also examinable that much. Then we have the payroll system as well. So the payroll system, this is the system okay, inventory. For inventory is inventory count. So I think let's start with the payroll system, then we'll end with the inventory count system. So if you're talking about payroll, this looks at the wages and salaries being paid to employees. So the payroll system aims to make sure that employees are paid for the hours worked. So it must ensure employees are only paid for the hours worked. So it must ensure that employees are only paid for the hours worked. Must ensure that employees are only paid for the hours worked. Then besides that, it must also make sure that there are no ghost employees. So it must make sure that there are no ghost employees. Yeah, what's ghost employees? You must make sure there are no ghost employees or fictitious employees. Ghost employees, these are workers that are getting paid, but they don't exist. These are people that are on the payroll of the company, but we don't have such kind of employees. So if they are ghost employees, we are actually paying, but no one like that exists. So if our system is enabling that, it's a poor system. Also, our system needs to ensure that there are clock ins and clock outs that are managed. We shouldn't have someone clocking in and out on behalf of another. So the clocking in and clocking out of the employees, there should be someone managing it so that we don't have employees maybe not coming to work, but but having their friends clocking in for them. Then the overtime premiums must be approved by seniors. Overtime premium. Must get it, not just overtime, but the wages must be verified by the payroll manager or any supervisor, payroll supervisor, or manager. If someone says, okay, I worked these hours overtime, there should be someone to verify those overtime work, the hours worked. Then we should make sure when new people join and new people leave, the registers are updated regularly. So we can have new employees not getting paid, or old employees. There are those that can leave the company but still get their salaries because we have delayed updating our registers. So the registers of joiners, and leavers must be updated regularly. So this requires the this requires the payroll department to work closely with the HR department. They should know who joined and also who left the company so that they can update their payroll system. So there must be coordination with the HR department. Okay, then from there, we can also talk about I think those are some of the key issues. So I'm just picking some of the key systems that you need to know of. But the list is not all. So don't say, okay, say you said it's only these areas. No, I'm just picking the key ones, but all areas are important. So every system can have its loopholes. The question can say, identify the weaknesses in the system. So we can have the inventory count system, how the organization count their inventory. So when we are counting our inventory, so we can say the inventory count system. So the aim of this system is to make sure that we can say inventory that is now maybe obsolete is removed. So the system must identify obsolete inventory and remove it from good inventory. That which we can no longer sell, the system must identify and separate obsolete inventory. So that inventory which is now maybe damaged, the inventory that you can no longer sell, when we are counting our inventory, the system should be able to pick that this inventory is now outdated. The system must also be done by separate teams. One team counting and the other verifying. One team counting and the other team verifying. One of the teams can be counting, the other team can be doing the verification process to see whether they are not, to see whether what the first team did is correct. Then also we should have measures in place to separate inventory which has been counted with that which has not been counted. So if we're just mixing up the inventory, there is a danger of double counting the inventory. So the counted inventory must be separated. Maybe we mark the one that we've counted, or maybe we put it aside. So there must be measures to separate. I don't know which system they're going to give me in the exam. I'm just telling you what you should watch out for. There must be measures to separate the inventory counted and that which has not been counted. The inventory counted and that which has not been counted. Then also, there must be count instructions. There must be inventory count instructions, which must be followed. So when you're going to count the inventory, there should be rules or instructions that we are supposed to follow as the accounting team. As the counting team, and also these rules must be followed. So if the system is good, and also for inventory count, if there are inventory movements, such as maybe new inventory is bought or sold during inventory count. There must be measures to account for the inventory that is moved in or out of the warehouse during the inventory count. There must be measures. Maybe we can say all the inventory that is coming in during the inventory count should not be mixed. It should be put in a separate corner where we are going to count it alone. Then all the inventory that has been sold, maybe also you should say during the inventory count, you should only sell inventory in this batch. So there must be measures to account for inventory coming in or going out during inventory count. So you should have measures for inventory coming in or going out during inventory count. So these are some of the systems where you need to read more, make sure you understand the system, so that if you're given the system for the company, you'll be able to pick what they are doing here. There's a problem in the system. You'll be able to pick there's something wrong about the system that they use. Okay, now let's move on. So if they're now giving you questions, let's go to our practice platform. And I show you the nature of the questions, how the questions are asked under this area. Just a moment, let me try to access the practice platform. Okay, so I think last time we opened this one, I think it was on audit risk and responses. So let's check the controls. Okay, so this is what this one, we attempted this together, and I requested that you go and do the rest as an assignment. Okay, so this one explain the difference between interim audit and final audit. I think I mentioned something about interim and final audit. Anyone who can help us? What's the difference between interim and final audit? In simple terms. Hello.
Hello.
Yes.
Let me try.
Yes.
I think an interim audit is the audit that is normally done uh, during the year or before the end of the year of the organization. Then a final audit is that audit that is done at the end at the end of the year of the organization before the financial statements are being published.
Yes, thank you for that. So interim is done during the year. Then as for the final audit is done after the year end, but before the accounts have been published. So, but our question, we are looking for questions on control. Okay, so this is one of the area that they can. So in this one, they've said identify a control deficiency, provide a control recommendation, and test of control. So a control deficiency, you are going into their, if it's a control deficiency, you are going through the system that they are using. So we go into the system that they are using, you identify a weakness. You tell us why it is a weakness. You then give us what can be done to improve that weakness. What can be done is a recommendation. Then the test of control is then done. So control deficiency and control recommendation, these are done in the interim phase of the audit. Let me just confirm, but I think I remember mentioning something about that, like that. Let me check if I did mention something. Here, the interim audit, the final audit, I'm sure I did mention something there. So the question is saying, come up with the control deficiencies and the control recommendations, then the test of control. The control deficiencies and control recommendations, these are during the interim phase. Then the test of control, this one is done during the final audit. So the control deficiency, you identify the weakness, you give them a recommendation. Then when you are testing the control, you are testing whether the recommendation you gave is being applied. Or you are testing whether, if it's now testing the control, because there was a deficiency, you are now testing the recommendation that you suggested to them. But is it being done? You are testing your recommendation. Are they applying it? So if you are suggested that they should have separate departments they should have separate department for recruitment and the department for payroll, testing the control. You then now review the job description for the departments to see whether there are separate responsibilities for the recruitment and the payroll department. But in this case, we are answering based on the case we have been given. I want you to attempt this as homework. And I don't want to spoon feed you. So we are going to revise. I'll give you maybe 2, 3 in the next session before we move to the next things. But I want you to first of all attempt on your own. Just try to, so that when I'm now explaining, you'll be able to figure out where you are missing it. But there are those who haven't responded to the first assignment. Please start gradually doing these questions, because F8, if you know, if maybe you've heard, it's not a subject you can fool around with. So please make sure. The reason why people fail the subject is never because it's difficult. I love audit and assurance, and I don't think it's a difficult subject. But a lot of people want to end up doing it under pressure, of which is a subject that you master through practice, not through reading the book. You master through doing a lot of questions, not through reading a lot of notes. So for today, feel exhausted now. I think for today we can end here. Then I'll send you the slide, the notes in the group. Then I will request you please go and I'm requesting that you please go and attempt this as an assignment. You just go to your, if you go to your portal, practice platform, this is AA specimen. So you are attempting the question on the control deficiency and the test of control, so that when we discuss it together next time in class, you will be at least a step ahead. Because now if we are to do it, it will be me doing the question, of which I don't want it to be like that. Because I have done quite a lot of these questions, it won't be much of help to you. So for today, I don't know if there are any questions before we close.